The words echoed off the glass walls like a death sentence. Marcus stood at the conference room podium and announced my demotion to the entire leadership team. 23 faces stared at me while he handed my senior director position to someone with half my experience. My name is Clare Donovan. I'm 34 years old, and until 10 minutes ago, I was the marketing director at Apex Solutions, and at that moment, I understood what betrayal truly felt like. The man who'd mentored me for 6 years, who'd promised me partnership track, had just stripped away everything I'd built. The room felt smaller suddenly, the air thicker. Someone coughed awkwardly. Marcus wouldn't meet my eyes as he explained that Amanda Preston would be taking over my role, effective immediately. Amanda, who'd been with the company 18 months. Amanda, who happened to be Marcus's wife's younger sister. The connection everyone knew about but nobody mentioned. I kept my face neutral, my hands steady on the table. Inside, something cold and calculating was being born. I nodded once, gathered my tablet, and walked out with my spine straight. Behind me, whispered conversations erupted like wildfire. I didn't look back. That version of Claire, the one who trusted and believed, died in that conference room. Someone new was taking her place. The next morning, I arrived at my new desk in the corner cubicle. My old office, with its window view and door, now belonged to Amanda. Someone had already removed my nameplate. My personal photos sat in a cardboard box beside my new workspace. I unpacked slowly, deliberately, letting the humiliation sink into my bones like medicine. This feeling would fuel everything that came next. Around me, colleagues avoided eye contact. Some offered sympathetic smiles. Nobody said what we all knew, that merit meant nothing when nepotism ruled. I watched Amanda move into my office, hanging her sorority photos where my diplomas had been. She caught me looking and waved cheerfully, oblivious to the earthquake she'd triggered. I waved back and smiled. That smile cost me something, but I needed her to think I'd accepted defeat. My computer pinged with meeting invitations, all the strategy sessions I'd once led, now marked with Amanda as the organizer. My calendar looked empty for the first time in years. Perfect. I had time now. Time to think, observe, and plan. Time to become invisible while I gathered everything I needed. I started noticing things immediately. Amanda arrived late to meetings, unprepared, relying on notes I'd written months ago. She spoke confidently about projects she barely understood, using my reports as her own. In our weekly team calls, she took credit for strategies I'd developed, victories I'd fought for. Marcus praised her lavishly each time, never acknowledging the source of her sudden expertise. I said nothing. I took notes instead. Every meeting, every presentation, every moment of borrowed brilliance went into a document I kept on my personal laptop. I titled it simply Observations, and backed it up to 3 different cloud services. The patterns emerged quickly. Amanda didn't just lack experience, she lacked basic competence. She made decisions that contradicted company policy, approved budgets without proper authorization, ignored compliance requirements I'd spent years establishing. But Marcus protected her, smoothing over mistakes, reassigning blame to others. Twice, junior employees got written up for problems Amanda created. I watched those employees leave his office with tears in their eyes, carrying reprimands they didn't deserve. By the 3rd week, I'd created a system. Every email Amanda sent, I forwarded to my personal account. Every meeting I attended where she spoke, I recorded audio on my phone. Legal in our state, necessary for what I was building. I documented timeline discrepancies, budget violations, and contractual oversights. My observations document grew to 40 pages. I organized it meticulously, chronologically, by category, by severity of violation. Each entry included dates, times, witnesses, and supporting evidence. At night, I cross-referenced company policies, reading through our employee handbook, our ethics code, our compliance requirements. I highlighted every regulation Amanda had broken, every procedure Marcus had bypassed to protect her. My apartment walls became covered with printouts and sticky notes, connections drawn in red marker. My best friend Vanessa came over one evening, stopped in the doorway and whispered, "This looks like a crime drama." I smiled. That's exactly what it is. She didn't ask questions. Just brought wine and helped me organize the evidence by legal weight. We worked until 3 in the morning, creating a folder that would be impossible to dismiss. I began attending company events I'd previously skipped. The Friday happy hours, the charity fundraisers, the tedious networking mixers. Not to socialize, but to observe. Marcus and Amanda relaxed at these events, drinking too much, speaking too freely. I nursed 1 glass of wine all evening and listened. At a client appreciation dinner, I overheard Marcus promise a contract extension to a vendor his brother-in-law owned. The vendor's prices were 30% higher than our usual supplier. Amanda stood beside him, nodding eagerly, discussing kickback percentages. They didn't notice me behind the decorative plant, my phone recording every word. At the company holiday party, Amanda bragged to other directors about her insider advantage, how family connections made everything easier. She laughed about employees who worked themselves to exhaustion for promotions they'd never receive. Why compete when you can just be related to the right people? She said, raising her champagne glass. 3 directors clinked their glasses with hers, congratulating her wisdom. I captured photos of that moment. Not the celebration, but the faces of employees nearby who'd overheard. Their expressions told the story better than any testimony could. I started rebuilding relationships with colleagues Marcus had sidelined. There were many of us, talented people overlooked because we lacked the right connections. I found them in the break room, in the parking garage, in the building's lower-level cafeteria where executives never ventured. I didn't tell them my plan. I simply listened to their frustrations, validated their experiences, and occasionally asked careful questions. Did you document that? Were there witnesses? Do you still have those emails? They opened up, sharing stories of bypassed promotions, stolen ideas, and unfair treatment. Each conversation added depth to my understanding of how deep the corruption ran. This wasn't just about Amanda replacing me. This was systematic, a pattern stretching back years. Marcus had built an empire of favoritism, surrounding himself with family and friends while genuinely talented people stagnated. I created a second document titled Pattern Recognition, cataloging every instance of nepotism I could verify. The evidence mounted like snowfall, quiet and relentless. By December, I had testimony from 11 employees, all willing to speak if protected from retaliation. I kept their names encrypted, secured behind passwords only I knew. Trust was earned slowly, carefully. Nobody would be exposed before they were ready. January brought quarterly reviews. Amanda scheduled mine for a Friday afternoon, the slot reserved for problem employees. I arrived precisely on time with my laptop and a leather portfolio. She sat behind my old desk, barely looking up from her phone. "Claire, your performance has been concerning," she began, reading from a script Marcus had clearly written. Multiple missed deadlines, poor team collaboration, lack of initiative. I listened quietly while she listed fabricated failures. When she finished, I asked calmly, "Could you provide specific examples with dates?" She blinked. "I don't have them memorized, obviously." "Of course. Could you email them to me? For my records?" Her smile tightened. "That won't be necessary. Just improve." I nodded and stood. "I'll certainly work on those specific areas you've detailed so thoroughly." The sarcasm sailed over her head. She signed my review form without reading my written rebuttal, which I'd carefully crafted to create a legal paper trail. I photographed the document before leaving her office. That review would become Exhibit A in what I was building. That same week, I scheduled a meeting with Human Resources, citing concerns about workplace fairness. The HR director, Patricia Williams, listened politely and promised to look into it. Her notes went nowhere. I'd expected that. But I'd created another documentation point, another breadcrumb showing I'd followed proper channels before escalating. In February, Amanda made her biggest mistake. She approved a marketing campaign that violated federal advertising regulations. I'd noticed the legal issues immediately but said nothing, watching as she pushed it through without consulting our legal team. The campaign launched on a Tuesday. By Thursday, we'd received a cease and desist letter from regulatory authorities. By Friday, The company faced potential fines exceeding $200,000. Marcus called an emergency meeting. I attended remotely, watching through video as he absorbed the crisis. "Who approved this?" he demanded. Amanda's face went white. "I thought legal had reviewed it." "Did you ask them to?" Silence. She hadn't. Because she didn't know she needed to. Marcus's jaw clenched. For the first time, I saw doubt flicker across his face when he looked at her. The legal team spent the weekend doing damage control. The campaign was pulled, apologies issued, and settlements negotiated. The incident cost the company $85,000 in fines and legal fees. I'd saved every email proving Amanda had bypassed proper approval channels. I'd documented Marcus's subsequent attempts to blame the marketing team instead of his niece-in-law. The folder grew heavier with each edition. This wasn't just evidence anymore. It was ammunition. March arrived with budget planning season. Amanda was responsible for presenting the department's financial projections to the board. I'd always handled this previously, spending weeks ensuring accuracy and defensibility. Amanda had 3 weeks and my old spreadsheets. She changed numbers without understanding the formulas behind them. She inflated revenue projections to make her performance look stronger. She cut essential operational costs to create the illusion of efficiency. I watched her work, saying nothing when she made errors that would become obvious within 2 quarters. She presented to the board on March 15th. I wasn't invited, but I received the presentation file through our shared department drive. The projections were fantastical. Growth rates that defied market conditions, cost savings that eliminated necessary staff, revenue assumptions based on contracts we hadn't secured. I created a parallel document showing realistic projections based on actual data. The contrast was damning. When the board approved Amanda's budget, I knew we had approximately 8 weeks before reality exposed the fiction. I marked June 1st on my calendar. That's when quarterly results would reveal the gap between Amanda's promises and actual performance. I needed everything ready before then. The board would be looking for answers. I intended to provide them. I spent April fortifying my position. I worked overtime voluntarily, taking on projects others had abandoned. I rebuilt relationships with clients who felt neglected during the leadership transition. I fixed problems quietly, without seeking recognition, building a reputation for reliability while Amanda stumbled through her responsibilities. Colleagues started coming to me with questions instead of her. She didn't notice. She was too busy decorating her office and taking long lunches with Marcus, planning their next power move. I documented every successful project I completed, every problem I solved, every client relationship I strengthened. My performance file became irrefutable proof that demoting me had been objectively wrong. I also began connecting with board members at industry events. Not obviously, not suspiciously. Just casual conversations, professional networking, establishing my credibility with people who would soon need to make difficult decisions. One board member, Thomas Carlyle, mentioned during a conference coffee break that he'd heard good things about my client work. "Thank you," I replied simply. "I'm just doing what's right for the company." He nodded appreciatively. Seeds planted, growing invisibly. May brought the first cracks. The marketing campaign fiasco had attracted attention from the company's insurance provider. They launched an audit of our compliance procedures. I received a call from an external auditor asking about approval processes. I answered every question honestly, providing documentation when requested. I didn't volunteer information beyond what was asked, but I didn't hide anything either. The truth was damaging enough. Amanda panicked when she learned about the audit. She tried to alter records retroactively, changing approval dates in our system. She didn't realize the system kept edit logs showing when modifications occurred. I captured screenshots of the original documents and the altered versions, along with timestamps proving the changes. Digital forensics would later confirm everything. Marcus tried to control the audit scope, but external investigators don't answer to CEOs. They interviewed employees randomly, asking questions about decision-making processes and approval chains. 3 people mentioned my name as someone who previously ensured compliance. Nobody mentioned Amanda except to note her absence from critical decisions. The auditors compiled their findings quietly. I wouldn't see the full report, but I heard whispers that it wasn't favorable. June arrived like Judgment Day. First quarter results were released internally on June 3rd. Amanda's optimistic projections missed reality by 43%. Revenue was down, costs were up, and client satisfaction scores had dropped significantly. The board scheduled an emergency meeting for June 10th. I wasn't invited to present, but my analysis of the discrepancies was requested by Thomas Carlyle directly. He'd remembered our conversation. I spent 3 days preparing a presentation that told the story through data alone. No accusations, no personal attacks. Just charts showing projected versus actual results, timelines of when decisions were made, and correlations between leadership changes and performance declines. I titled it Q1 Performance Analysis, Identifying Systematic Factors. Professional, objective, devastating. I sent it to Thomas on June 8th, 48 hours before the board meeting. I didn't sleep that night, wondering if I'd moved too quickly, if I should have waited. But the audit report was landing the same week. The confluence of failures would force questions. I needed to be the one providing answers. My phone rang at 6 a.m. on June 9th. Thomas Carlyle's calm voice asked, "Can you present this to the full board tomorrow morning?" My heart hammered. "Yes, sir." "What time?" 9 a.m. sharp. "And Claire?" "Bring everything." I arrived at headquarters at 8:30 on June 10th carrying 3 leather folders. One contained my presentation. One contained supporting documentation. The third contained evidence of systematic corruption, organized by category: nepotism, financial irregularities, compliance violations, and ethical breaches. Security directed me to the executive boardroom on the 15th floor. I'd never been inside before. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. 12 leather chairs surrounded a massive table. Portrait paintings of former CEOs lined the walls, stern faces judging from frames. Board members entered gradually, greeting each other with quiet professionalism. Thomas introduced me to those I hadn't met. Marcus arrived last, Amanda beside him. He stopped when he saw me, surprise flickering across his face before his expression hardened. "What's she doing here?" he asked Thomas. "She's presenting the quarterly performance analysis I requested. Please everyone take your seats." Marcus sat at the table's head, radiating displeasure. Amanda took a seat beside him, looking confused and worried. She hadn't seen this coming. Neither had Marcus. That was the point. Thomas gestured to me. "Claire, whenever you're ready." I connected my laptop to the display screen, took a breath, and began. "Good morning. I'm Clare Donovan, currently serving as operations manager. I previously served as senior director until my position was transferred to Amanda Preston in October of last year. I'm here today to present analysis of our first quarter performance and identify factors contributing to significant variance from projected results." I advanced to the first slide showing the 43% gap. Murmurs rippled around the table. Marcus's face reddened. These projections were approved by this board based on presentations from the current leadership team. However, when we examine the methodology behind these projections, concerning patterns emerge. I showed the spreadsheet comparisons, Amanda's inflated numbers beside realistic market-based forecasts I'd prepared using identical underlying data. The approved projections assumed growth rates inconsistent with current market conditions and client acquisition rates that exceeded our historical performance by 300% without corresponding strategy changes. A board member interrupted. "Who prepared the approved projections?" "Amanda Preston, ma'am." "And who prepared these alternative projections?" "I did, using the same source data but applying standard industry analysis methods." Marcus stood. "This is inappropriate. Claire is obviously—" Thomas cut him off. "Marcus, please sit down. Let her finish." I continued through 12 more slides, each one building the case that the performance gap resulted from fundamental leadership competency issues, not market conditions. I kept my tone neutral, letting data tell the story. Beyond projection accuracy, we've experienced operational issues affecting client relationships and regulatory compliance. I advanced to slides documenting the marketing campaign disaster, the compliance audit findings, and the budget manipulation Amanda had attempted. Each slide included dates, costs, and consequences. Board members' expressions shifted from interested to concerned to alarmed. These incidents share common characteristics: decisions made without proper authorization channels, lack of technical expertise in critical roles, and attempts to conceal mistakes rather than correct them. The financial impact over 7 months totals approximately $340,000 in fines, legal fees, and lost client revenue. I paused, letting the number sink in. This doesn't include opportunity costs from damaged relationships or decreased employee morale. Marcus's jaw clenched so tightly I could see muscles jumping. Amanda had gone pale. I've prepared detailed documentation supporting every claim I've made today. I held up the second folder. This includes emails, meeting recordings, financial records, and testimony from 11 employees who've experienced similar concerns. I'm providing this to the board because I believe our company deserves leadership that prioritizes competence and ethics over personal relationships. The room went silent. Finally, a board member asked the question I'd been waiting for. Ms. Donovan, are you alleging systematic corruption? I met her eyes steadily. I'm presenting evidence and allowing this board to reach its own conclusions. Thomas took control. We'll need time to review this material. Marcus, Amanda, you're dismissed while we discuss. Marcus exploded. You can't be serious. You're going to believe this disgruntled employee over me? I've built this company. I've delivered results for 15 years. And we appreciate that, Thomas replied calmly. But these are serious allegations requiring investigation. Please step out. Marcus stared at me with pure hatred. You've made a terrible mistake, Claire. I documented everything, I replied quietly, including that threat just now. His face went purple. Amanda grabbed his arm, pulling him toward the door. After they left, Thomas turned to me. This is extensive. How long have you been compiling this? 7 months. Since my demotion. Why wait until now? I needed to be thorough. I needed to follow proper channels first. I needed the pattern to become undeniable. Another board member spoke. You realize this could destroy your career, regardless of outcome. I nodded. I considered that. But staying silent would have destroyed something more important, my integrity. And this company deserves better than being run into the ground by nepotism and incompetence. Thomas glanced around the table, reading the room. We'll need to bring in external investigators. This needs independent verification. I expected that, I said. Everything is already organized for forensic review. The board dismissed me after 2 hours. I walked to my car in a daze, adrenaline finally wearing off. My hands shook as I started the engine. I'd just accused the CEO of corruption in front of the entire board of directors. There was no walking this back. I drove to Vanessa's apartment. She opened the door, took one look at my face, and pulled me inside. You did it. I nodded, suddenly exhausted. I did it. We sat on her couch, and I told her everything. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. What happens now? Investigation. Probably takes 2 to 3 weeks. Then the board decides. And if they side with Marcus? I'd considered this possibility extensively. Then I've created a documented record that I can take to regulatory authorities and media outlets. This doesn't end here if they try to bury it. Vanessa squeezed my hand. I'm proud of you. My phone buzzed constantly over the next hour. Colleagues texting questions, expressing support, sharing rumors spreading through the office. Marcus had left the building immediately after the board meeting. Amanda had been seen crying in her car. HR had sent a company-wide email announcing an organizational review and requesting cooperation with external investigators. The machine I'd set in motion was moving faster than I'd anticipated. By evening, my email contained a message from Thomas Carlyle. Investigation is underway. You're on paid administrative leave pending the outcome. Don't discuss this matter with anyone except investigators. We'll be in touch. The next 3 weeks were torture. I stayed home, jumping every time my phone rang. The investigative firm was thorough, interviewing employees separately, reviewing years of financial records, analyzing email trails and decision-making patterns. I was interviewed 5 times, each session lasting hours. They verified every piece of evidence I'd provided, checking timestamps, confirming witnesses, and validating my analysis. Other employees began coming forward independently, sharing their own experiences. The 11 I'd documented became 23. The pattern I'd identified was apparently far more extensive than even I'd realized. Marcus had built an entire network of unqualified family and friends into leadership positions over 10 years. Vanessa brought me groceries and forced me to leave the apartment occasionally. "You're going to make yourself sick," she said, finding me staring at my laptop at 2 a.m., refreshing my email compulsively. "I just need to know what they found." "You already know what they found. You gave them the roadmap." She was right. But knowing and waiting for official confirmation were different things. On the 20th day, my phone rang. Thomas Carlyle's number. My heart stopped. "Claire, can you come to the office tomorrow morning at 9? We're ready to present findings." I barely slept. I chose my outfit carefully, professional but not overly formal. I wanted to project confidence without arrogance. I arrived 15 minutes early and waited in my car, watching employees enter the building. Nobody knew what was coming. At 8:55, I walked through the lobby. The security guard who usually ignored me nodded respectfully. "Morning, Ms. Donovan. They're waiting for you upstairs." The boardroom felt different this time. All 12 board members were present, along with 2 people I didn't recognize, the lead investigators, I assumed. Marcus and Amanda were notably absent. Thomas stood when I entered. "Claire, thank you for coming. Please sit down." I took the same seat I'd occupied 3 weeks ago. Thomas cleared his throat. "We've completed our investigation into the matters you brought to our attention. The findings are substantial and troubling." He slid a bound report across the table. 200 pages, minimum. "Our investigators confirmed every major allegation you presented. Financial irregularities, compliance violations, systematic nepotism, and attempts to conceal wrongdoing. The scope of the problems exceeded even your documentation." My breath caught. The board voted unanimously last night. Marcus Harrison has been terminated for cause, effective immediately. Amanda Preston and 3 other executives have also been dismissed. We're implementing immediate reforms to prevent similar situations. Thomas continued. "We owe you an apology, Claire. You were treated unjustly, and your attempts to raise concerns through proper channels were ignored. That failure is on us as much as on Marcus." One of the investigators spoke. "Ms. Donovan, your documentation was extraordinarily thorough. We've worked on dozens of corporate investigations, and I've never seen an employee compile such comprehensive evidence independently. You essentially did our job for us." I didn't know how to respond. The validation I'd needed for 7 months was overwhelming. "Thank you," I managed. Thomas leaned forward. "We'd like to offer you a position as Interim Chief Operations Officer while we search for permanent leadership. Your salary would reflect the role appropriately, and you'd report directly to this board during the transition." The room tilted slightly. Coup. 3 levels above where I'd been before my demotion. "I need you to understand," Thomas continued, "this isn't charity or guilt. It's recognition. You demonstrated exactly the kind of leadership integrity this company needs. You put the organization ahead of personal comfort. That's rare." I thought about everything I'd sacrificed. The sleepless nights, the risk, the loneliness of carrying this burden alone. "Can I have 24 hours to consider?" "Of course. Though I hope you'll say yes." They dismissed me with handshakes and gratitude. I walked to my car in a daze, the bound investigation report heavy in my bag. That evening, Vanessa came over with champagne. They offered me COO, I said, still processing. Interim COO. She laughed. Only you would emphasize interim right now. Claire, do you understand what this means? It means they want me to clean up Marcus's mess. It means they recognize you were right. It means you won. I considered that. Had I won? Marcus was gone, yes. Amanda and her fellow incompetents were gone. The corruption was exposed. But I'd lost 7 months of my life to anger and obsession. I'd damaged relationships, sacrificed peace of mind, and become someone I didn't entirely recognize. I don't feel like I won, I admitted. I just feel tired. Vanessa sat beside me. That's because revenge exhausts you, even when it's justified. But look what you protected. 23 employees who came forward. Hundreds more who'll now work in a fair environment. A company that almost collapsed under corrupt leadership. She was right. This had stopped being about me months ago. It had become about something bigger. I'd spent 7 months building a case because staying silent would have made me complicit in the harm Marcus caused. The victory wasn't the title or the vindication. It was knowing I'd done the right thing when it was hard. I called Thomas the next morning. I accept the position. My first day as interim COO was surreal. I moved into an office 3 times the size of my original one, with windows overlooking the city and furniture that probably cost more than my car. But I didn't spend much time admiring the view. There was too much work to do. The investigation had exposed problems in every department. I spent my first week meeting with employees, listening to their concerns, and beginning to rebuild trust in leadership. People were cautious at first, wondering if I'd become another Marcus. I addressed it directly in my first all-staff meeting. I know many of you are uncertain about leadership after what happened. I understand that trust is earned, not given. I'm going to make mistakes. But I promise you this, I will never prioritize personal loyalty over competence. I will never punish people for speaking truth. And I will never ask you to compromise your integrity. The applause started slowly, then built. After the meeting, employees lined up to talk to me. Some shared ideas. Some expressed gratitude. One junior analyst, tears in her eyes, thanked me for proving that speaking up mattered. I was about to quit, she admitted. I thought there was no point fighting a rigged system. There's always a point, I told her. Justice takes time, but it's worth fighting for. 3 months into my interim role, the board announced they were removing interim from my title. I'd proven myself through crisis management, strategic restructuring, and most importantly, through building a culture where competence mattered more than connections. Our second quarter results exceeded projections for the first time in 18 months. Client satisfaction scores had rebounded. Employee retention improved dramatically. The company was healing, slowly but surely. I hired a new leadership team based purely on qualifications and performance records. I implemented transparent promotion processes and mandatory ethics training. I established anonymous reporting channels so employees could raise concerns without fear of retaliation. The changes weren't revolutionary, they were basic good management. But after years of corruption, basic good management felt revolutionary. One afternoon, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. Subject line, "Thank you." The message was from a former employee who'd left the company during Marcus's tenure. I heard about everything that happened. I just wanted you to know that I left because I couldn't stomach the unfairness anymore. Seeing someone finally hold leadership accountable gives me hope. Thank you for fighting. I printed that email and pinned it beside my desk. On hard days, I'd read it and remember why the fight had mattered. 6 months after the investigation concluded, I received a call from Patricia Williams in HR. "Claire, we received a letter for you." It was forwarded from Marcus's attorney. My stomach tightened. What does it say? It's an apology. He's asking you not to pursue additional legal action. I hadn't planned to pursue anything further. The board's actions had been sufficient. But apparently Marcus thought I might. He's also offering financial compensation for emotional distress. The amount is substantial. I thought about it for maybe 5 seconds. Decline it. I don't want his money. Are you sure? This could be, I'm sure. What I wanted was justice, not a payout. I got justice. After Patricia hung up, I sat quietly in my office. Marcus had lost everything. His position, his reputation, his legacy. Amanda had moved back to her hometown, her career effectively over. The other executives he'd promoted had scattered to lesser positions in other companies. Their punishment had been natural and complete. I didn't need to add to it. Revenge had never been the goal. Accountability had been the goal. There's a difference. One is about hurting others. The other is about protecting everyone. I'd spent 7 months building accountability. Now I was spending my time building something better. That felt right. A year after I walked out of that first boardroom presentation, I stood at the same podium presenting annual results to the board. Revenue was up 18%. Employee satisfaction scores had reached historic highs. We'd won 3 major client contracts specifically because of our reputation for ethical leadership. Thomas Carlyle smiled at me from his board seat. Exceptional work, Claire. Though I doubt anyone in this room is surprised. After the meeting, he pulled me aside. I wanted you to know, we received final confirmation yesterday. The regulatory investigation found no further issues. Your documentation helped them close several other cases involving Marcus's business relationships. You didn't just save this company. You helped clean up the entire industry. I felt something release in my chest. Final validation. Complete closure. Thank you for believing me when it mattered, I said. Thank you for being brave enough to speak up. I drove home that evening thinking about the woman I'd been 13 months ago. The one who'd been demoted and humiliated, who'd felt powerless and betrayed. She would barely recognize the person I'd become. Not because of the title or the office, but because I'd learned something essential. Speaking truth costs something, but silence costs more. That night, I opened my laptop and looked at my observations document for the first time in months. 500 pages of evidence, organized meticulously, telling a story of corruption and courage. I could delete it now. The battle was over. But I didn't. I saved it to a secure drive and backed it up one final time. Not because I expected to need it, but because it represented something important. It was proof that one person, armed with truth and determination, could face down corruption and win. I closed the laptop and whispered to the quiet apartment, I didn't need revenge anymore. I only needed justice. And I'd found it.